True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but why would you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things of hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, observe how healthy, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. I can tell you the whole story. I can tell you. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Where it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him, and every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hotly tone, and inquiring how he passed the night. So you see, he would have been very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watchman's hand moves very quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my own sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that I was there, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea. Perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back. No. But his room was as black as pitch with that thick darkness, for the shutters were closed fast and through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it unsteadily. Steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprung up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quiet and still, and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not the groan of grief or pain. Oh no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when the world had slept, it was welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echoes the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first sight nose when he had turned in the bed. His fears have ever been since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor. It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with those suppositions, but he had found it all in vain, all in vain, because death, in approaching with him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped his victim. It was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he never saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You can imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of a spider shot from the crevice, fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all in a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it, chilled the very marrow of my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely on the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is about overacuteness of the sense? Now I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I know that sound too well. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could retain the ray upon the eye. Meantime the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, every moment. Do you mark me well? Have I told you that? I am nervous, so I am. And now at the dead of the hour of night, amid the dreadful silence of the old house, and so strange a noise excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw upon the lantern and leaped onto the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done, but for many minutes the heartbeat went on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard throughout the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead, as I would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will still think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night wanes, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too worried for all that night. Tom had caught all. When I had made an end to these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what I had known so to fear. What I had now to fear, no to fear, nothing to fear, nothing to fear. There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what I had to fear, for what had I to fear? I am going to fear, I am going to fear. I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took all my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures. Secure, undisturbed, in the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them to rest their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed his corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things, but ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My heart ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued, gained definiteness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much of such sound a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited by fury by the observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? Oh God, I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting on and grated upon the boards, but the noise arose all over and continuously increased. It grew louder and louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. And still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard? They had not? Oh. And still the men chatted. They know they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this desolation. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die, and now again. Hark! Louder and louder and louder! Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more! I admit the deed! Tear up the planks here! Here! It is the beating of the hideous heart!